right, in your course syllabus, the big packet, we're going to take a look at the independent reading page. So you are going to want to take a look at that, and you might want to have. We're going to write out a few little notes. I don't know if the margins are going to give you enough space, so maybe having a loose leaf paper or something like that might be helpful for you. Happy Tuesday / Friday, whatever you want to call it today.
Tuesday.
Still Tuesday?
Yeah, it doesn't change just because of some certain people's holidays.
Well, we're doing like emotional appeal here.
He's a special little snowflake right there.
Just Tuesday.
Oh wait, what?
It's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you.
Next Tuesday will also be Happy Tuesday when you submit your independent reading journal. Or not journal, excuse me, essay. So we're going to take a look at the prompts to clarify so you know what's going on. But next Tuesday night, so not Monday night at the end of break, but you come back to school on Tuesday, you have till Tuesday night to submit your formal independent reading essay. You're doing one essay. This one is going to cover the whole entire book. So job number 1, finish the book if you have not already done so. And then number 2, figure out what essay, and we'll go from there. But you're going to come back on Tuesday. I'm not going to be here on Tuesday. I'll be here on Wednesday. So if you do have questions about the essay, email them to me. Don't get ready to ask me something in class on Tuesday because we'll be looking at my picture or something like that, I guess. Because I'm not going to be here on Tuesday, we're going to start going over One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the next novel, on Wednesday of next week. So next Wednesday, your independent reading books, if you want, you can turn them in because you've already submitted your essay. You're going to be signing out a book, so I'll have the book sign sheet anyway. So if you do want to turn those books in, then at that time, we'll be able to do that. Because Wednesday is going to have a lot of stuff going on between signing out books, turning books in, going over One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and all that kind of stuff. Your literary term quiz next week is going to be on a Thursday, so that'll be a slight change. Now that will be on your weekly syllabus next week, so you'll know about it. But you don't have a quiz when you come back on Tuesday, nor is there going to be the next day. It'll end up being on Thursday. So just giving you a heads up on that. It'll be the essay types through irony. We'll give you reminds, and again, it'll be on your weekly syllabus and all that kind of stuff for you. But Tuesday of next week, independent reading essay. I suggest not worrying about your synthesis essay between now and Tuesday of next week. Take a week away from it. You got other stuff to worry about. You already have a rough draft done. You utilized your sources. Yes, many of you still have to kind of think of outside examples that you're going to use to complement your sources. But you're submitting this on November the 29th. Your final copy of the synthesis essay is December the 9th. That should give you ample time to take care of those things. And you think about it. Your first independent reading journal was due November 11th, the second one 18th. You did a synthesis essay for yesterday. Even if it's a rough draft, you still did an essay. Final copy coming in the 29th. You did 4 essays in 4 weeks, or you will be doing 4 essays in 4 weeks. So take a little bit of a break from it before you go back to the synthesis and give yourself a little bit of time to recharge. Maybe that's why you want to pass out. Yeah, just, and you have to give a speech. I don't know how you do it. Life you live. Tough, tough, tough. Good? Okay. Now I need like a minute to finish my cookie. I've been holding it for too long. And Emily's staring at me. I went with the orange icing. Compliments color. I appreciate the fact that your pink shirt actually is pink. Like purple pink shirts doesn't make sense to me. So, thank you. You already did these first 2, your independent reading journals, so you're not worried about them. We're focusing on this part down here where you have these 4 prompts. The worst thing you could do are write 4 essays. Just write 1. Abby, you're not getting bonus points for writing all 4. Don't even consider it. And I don't mean this to sound like you got easy points for your journals, because so far, and I think the rhetorical analysis ones have been even a little bit stronger than the DRQs, they were good. You didn't have to worry about as much content with the 2 body paragraphs, 500 words, and things like that. But the arguments were consistent. I think there was more focus taking place with the writings. The examples, I think, have been pretty good. So the hope is that that can carry over to this one. This essay that you're doing, this is going to be a traditional AP, scale 1 through 9 formal assignment. So it very much matches up with what you did for the Grapes of Wrath at the beginning of the year and the way that this one is going to be set up. If you haven't done it already, and most of you have, but some haven't, go back to Turnitin. Take a look at the comments for your first independent reading journal. Take a look at the comments for the second one when they're available later in the week. Take a look at the Grapes of Wrath essay. Make sure that you're aware of any issues that were popping up that, unless you went back and took a look at the comments, you might not have noticed, so that you don't have any of those correctable issues keep popping up over and over and over again. 2B verbs have been much better with the independent reading journals. I think folks are getting more aware of it. Certainly when you were doing your synthesis essay, some of you are having fun highlighting, Jack, you have 37 2B verbs and whatnot. So certainly you're more aware of it. Just make sure that you go through, proofread, and any of those real correctable things you're able to take care of when it comes to this essay. But for 3, 4, 5, 6, does not matter which one you do. You pick any one of those 4. I don't have a preference whatsoever, and I would also say that really any 4 of those can work with all. I think you have 5 independent reading books to choose from. Whether you're doing 1984, Huck Finn, Awakening, Jungle, or A Farewell to Arms, you could do any of those essays. So it's not that because you're doing A Farewell to Arms, Kaylee has to do number 4. It makes no difference whatsoever with which one she chooses. Go with one that you want to do. When we do your second independent reading book, again, you're going to be choosing from the same 5 in come December and January. You're just going to write one formal essay. You're not going to be doing journals. So again, you'll be coming back to 3, 4, 5, or 6, and you'll have the option of doing whatever 4 you want. So if Matt decides to write about number 5 for this book, he could still do number 5 for the next book. So don't worry about, I can't write this essay later on or anything like that. Just pick whichever essay you want to do. But main thing, keep in mind, scores are going to be 1 through 9. It'll be worth 50 points in progress book, but you'll be getting 6 plus, 7 plus, that kind of stuff going on. When it comes to your formal essay, because you haven't really done one in a while so far as a take-home, a couple things to keep in mind in comparison to the journals. You're going to have your introduction. Not really going to be any surprise there. You are going to have 3 body paragraphs. Don't tell Mrs. Washington I said that. How many examples do you need to have in each body paragraph? You have to have 3, and by examples we mean quoted or cited examples. So within each of those 3 body paragraphs, you're taking a look at 2 direct quotes, and then 1 additional cited example. If you want that one to be a direct quote as well, that's fine, doesn't matter to me, but at least 2 of them will be direct quotes. So when you're looking at the fact that you're going to have all 3 body paragraphs and you're going to have 2 quotes, 1 cited example, that means when it's all said and done, there will be 9 specific examples coming from the text. And you are looking at the entire text, so you want to make sure you're representing the whole novel. Now, I'm anticipating some questions about your journals and those 9 examples. What are some folks going to want to do? I already have 8 examples from my 2 journals. Can I use those examples when it comes to your formal essay? I'll let you use at least 2 of them, okay? So I don't want you to recycle all 8, but if you have 2 examples that you were using in your IR journals, you can take 2 of them and use them in there again. And you can plagiarize yourself. And yes, Turnitin will tell me, go. Nicole's paper, this matches North Hill's paper. I look at it and it'll say like 3%, and it's because her heading's the same. And her header and page numbers are the same as other things. So it will pop up that, yeah, this is similar. So if you do have like 4 quotes coming from Journal 1, 4 quotes coming from Journal 2, her percentage, and we're just picking Nicole by random, is going to jump up all of a sudden. So I'm not trying to trap you with it, where, okay, let's see if Matt actually did it, but it is going to kind of pop up. I don't have to have your journals right there next to me and all that kind of stuff. So just don't do it. So introduction, 3 body paragraphs. Certainly there's going to be a conclusion as well, to finish up the essay. One thing within your packet, your syllabus, that would probably be good to take a look at. The journals are on page 24. On page 21, I believe, yes. Page 21 is the analysis essay outline, and then 22 and 23 has like a checklist. And that was at the beginning of the year when you were still 10th graders, you know. I mean, you were in 11th grade, but you were still 10th graders, ankle biters. You're now growing up to be juniors. Yes, 10th graders are ankle biters. Babies. In like a month, you'll have a full semester under your belt, so then like you're actually almost seniors. In like 4 months, you went from an ankle biter to a senior. The analysis essay outline. And again, I don't want it to be like force feeding that Olivia's essays must look like this, because you certainly know, different writers are going to have different styles and whatnot. But within your journals, and this would hold true with TWAs as well, if there are any paragraphs where we start to kind of sacrifice things because we put all our attention in the body paragraphs, it would be the conclusion and the introduction. So I suggest looking over the analysis essay outline, maybe even looking over the checklist for those 2 paragraphs. Do you have an attention grabber? Do you have a transition statement going into the novel where you do mention the author and the title of the book? Do you have a little bit of background, like 2 sentences about the book and then going into your thesis statement? Some of you did have very formal introductions for your journals, some of you didn't. And it didn't hurt you when it came to the journals because we were really putting the emphasis on the body paragraph. But I would double check, make sure that your introduction looks pretty good. And again, this would be a reason to go back to the Grapes of Wrath essay and turn it in, because if you did have any deficiencies within the introduction and conclusion, I would have let you know back then. If that introduction went well, that could be something that you might want to mirror when it comes to this formal essay that you're going to do. The to be verb rules would stay the same: intro, conclusion, first, last sentence, and body paragraphs. Mentioned you folks are getting very good at that, and that never changes throughout the course of the year. Don't hold your breath and wait for the day when I go, okay, no to be verbs in this essay at all. That moment's not coming. It'll always be intro, conclusion, first, last sentence, and body paragraphs. Much to Abby's disappointment. The other thing that folks have also been pretty good at, but make sure that we don't forget about it. What's your last page going to be? Make sure you have your works cited page. And again, that hasn't been something that people have habitually been forgetting, but you don't want to, have that pop up. Speaking of works cited page, on Tuesday when you do come in, weekly syllabus will be there for you to pick up. I'll also have that. We did it for the Grapes of Wrath, the Declaration of Academic Integrity, where you mention sources, people you work with, things like that. So you'll be receiving that on Tuesday, and then you'll be able to sign off, bring it back to me on Wednesday. So any sources that you use, so obviously your book, any sources you use for attention grabbing quote you would include, and if there's any other resources that you're using to kind of help you locate examples and things like that, make sure that gets mentioned on that works cited page as well. Before jumping into the prompts, any questions about at least what the essay requirements are and all that kind of stuff? It's just going to be turnitin.com copy, and the Grapes of Wrath is really the only time that you're going to have to turn in like the rough draft and the peer editing sheets like that. Even when we do the synthesis essay, I'm not taking your rough draft back. So unless otherwise noted, turnitin.com only. Now, if things happen, Wi-Fi goes out, all that kind of stuff. If it's Tuesday night and you cannot submit it to Turnitin or whatever's going on, you can print out a paper copy, give it to me the next day. At least I know you have one, and then we can figure out how to get it. But yeah, Turnitin, that's the only one that we're going to need to do. All right. Anything else? General things before going into the prompts. Okay. All right. Mentioned to you that we got 4 different prompts. I don't have a personal preference for any of them. If you need a security blanket, number 3 is probably the prompt for you, just because it is similar to stuff that we have already done. So some novels and plays seem to advocate change in social or political attitudes or traditions. Choose such a novel, know briefly the particular attitudes or traditions that the author wishes to modify. Then analyze the techniques that the author uses to influence the reader's or audience's view. Avoid merely plot summary. Based on the fact that you're going to analyze techniques, this would let you know that what kind of essay are you going to be doing. Should you choose number 3, it's going to, Diddle's rhetorical analysis is going to be taking place with this one. So number 3 is a security blanket in the sense that you have certainly already done this essay, and the last response, independent reading journal that you did was rhetorical analysis, so you're kind of already in that flow, so to speak, of writing that type of essay. So if you want to do rhetorical analysis, number 3 would be the one for you. None of these options are a D or Q. None of these options are a synthesis, and number 3 is the only rhetorical analysis. The other ones, they're certainly still analytical essays, but number 3 would be the only one where you'd have to mention motifs, imagery, allusions, allegory, all those kind of literary devices for it. The other ones are an opportunity to kind of give you a little bit of a break from having to do synthesis, D or Q, rhetorical analysis. So if you want to do something different, 4, 5, 6 is probably more of what you want to do. I don't want to say number 3 is playing it safe by any means, and I don't look at it that way. But if you're comfortable with writing the kind of essay that you did for The Grapes of Wrath, and the type of thing that we did for Heart of Darkness, the type of thing that you did for your last independent reading journal, then this would certainly be a way to go. I told you that you can only take 2 quotes from your journals and incorporate it. If you want to use your devices, like you did 1984 and you picked irony, you can still use that same device. You have much more of the book to pull from. You can certainly get more examples. So if you do want to reuse devices or even go into a little bit more detail about some of the arguments, if the argument that you were looking at was taking a look at political attitudes, traditions that need to be changed or modified, you can certainly still build upon that. But don't take independent reading journal number 2, add a third body paragraph, add one more example in each paragraph, because then you're plagiarizing yourself. So number 3 is rhetorical analysis. Keep in mind, not that you can't pick an argument, but it has to deal with social political attitudes that the author wishes to modify, which 1984 has, Gatsby, Farewell to Arms, all the books that we've been doing. I would say you can certainly find that within there. So anything specific about number 3? You'd be picking 3 rhetorical devices, getting your examples, doing the same thing you did for your independent reading essay. Jack, you feel okay? Double space, Times New Roman. Remember, there's that MLA template on Google Docs. You've now embraced that? Yep. Don't submit the Latin essay that's preloaded into it. Okay, thank you. All right, number 4. Writers often highlight values. Ooh, we got like a lonely part of it. R. Writers often highlight values of a culture or society by using characters who are alienated from that culture or society due to race, gender, class, creed. Choose a novel in which such a character plays a significant role and show how that character's alienation reveals the surrounding society's assumptions or values. So you're going to pick a character who in your book you feel is alienated. What does that alienation reveal then about that surrounding society? I would say for this one, books certainly have multiple characters who are alienated or who could be alienated. I would still choose one character. So if you were doing Huck Finn, you don't want to do one paragraph about Huck, one paragraph about Chip. If you were doing Gatsby, you're not going to do one paragraph about Daisy, one paragraph about Gatsby. One paragraph about Julia, one paragraph about Winston in 1984, one paragraph about Frederick Henry, and then another paragraph about Catherine Barclay. Pick one character. It does not have to be the protagonist. It certainly should be a character who plays a pretty significant role because you want him to be present throughout the majority of the book and explain what that alienation reveals about the society's assumptions and moral values. But you would basically be choosing a character who has been alienated, some shape, some form. Could be a physical alienation where they are excluded. Could be like a mental, psychological. You got political alienations taking place. A whole bunch of different varieties could certainly be out there so far as alienation. but find the person who's been alienated, and then how does that significance tie into the book as a whole. This might be, depending on the viewpoint that you took, this could be kind of similar to what some of you did for The Catcher in the Rye. When you're taking a look at Holden's madness, some of you were looking at the fact that he feels alienated from other people, isolated as part of his madness, and then kind of explain how that ties into the book as a whole. So that might be something you want to take a look at. Remember, your folders are back there in that second bin. They're yours to take at any time. If you think looking at your Catcher in the Rye essay or notes would be helpful, you got the ability to do so. The question comes up. It's not a DRQ. It's not a rhetorical analysis. So how do I go about setting up my essay? Besides introduction and conclusion, which are pretty much given, any ideas with body paragraphs, which you could do for number 4, and be able to maintain consistent, focused argument throughout. First thing you gotta do is choose a character. Then what? And hit power on the computer. And then you hit double space, and you change your Arial to Times New Roman 12.
You would figure out the values of the culture,
Yeah, and I would say that would probably work its way into the introduction, where you could kind of mention what those surrounding societies would be. So in 1984, you got a lot of political tyranny. Huck Finn, you certainly have racism, segregation, those kinds of things going on. So if you're taking a look at number 4, within your introduction, I would certainly include, what are society's morals or assumptions. One year I abbreviated the word assumptions at a bad spot. Whoops. Then I'd be going into my body paragraphs. I would say body number 1 and body number 2, not chalk outlines, but body paragraphs. And both of those I want to probably provide examples of Jack, thank you for stepping up to the plate. And how you decide what goes into body 1, body 2 could kind of vary. They might be the same forms of alienation in both of those. You might have one where there is, some physical removal or exile taking place. Maybe the other one's a little bit more mental or psychological. That's going to vary from person to person. But really in those first 2 paragraphs, after we know what society's morals and assumptions are, explain where that alienation, how that alienation has taken place, and then in body paragraph number 3, how are we going to link those 2 things together? Apparently that was a good question. Jack's not sure. He's making weird faces.
explain how it, go back to the societies.
So now that we know who our character is and what that alienation is, how does that go back and reveal, society's morals and assumptions? A key word that we were really driving home when we did the Catcher in the Rye essay, since I alluded to that one before, is in body paragraph number 3, you're really explaining the overall significance of the alienation. And so that's the part that you're going to drive home in that 3rd body paragraph. And really, that's going to be the trend for prompts number 4, 5, and 6. 3rd body paragraph, what's the overall significance really going to be? And then last one's going to be conclusion, wrap up, offer your clinching statement, all of those things. Any questions about number 4? All right. Number 5, we got a statement here from Faye Weldon, British writer, who goes, "The writers I do believe who get the best and most lasting response from their readers are the writers who offer a happy ending through moral development. By a happy ending, I do not mean mere fortunate events, a marriage, or a last-minute rescue from death, but some kind of spiritual reassessment or moral reconciliation, even with the self, even at death. Doesn't mean you have to have death, but going even at an example like that. So choose a novel that has the kind of ending that Weldon describes, and then in a well-written essay, identify that spiritual reassessment or moral reconciliation evident in the ending and explain its significance in the work as a whole. So you're really putting a lot of emphasis on, even though this might not be the classic rainbows and butterfly and kitten kind of happy ending, how is it still a significant happy ending based on Weldon's description? A concern does pop up for some folks because with the 9 examples that I want you to provide, I want you to represent the whole entire novel. What then becomes a concern for some people looking at prompt number 5? How am I going to represent? And this isn't like a spoiler, but I'm just like picking random name for no particular book. Bob dies. Do I have 9 quotes about Bob's death? On page 117. I can only go to it, the well so many times. Keep in mind, though, we have some kind of moral development, spiritual reassessment, or moral reconciliation. Basically, all of those are fancy words for some kind of what within the character. There's been some kind of change. So if a change has occurred, what's the best way to demonstrate that change? Well, this was the character in the beginning. These are the changes that took place throughout the course of the book, and then when we get to the ending, this is the overall significance of it. So yes, you are certainly going to be putting emphasis on the end, but for the setup for that particular essay, if you do go with number 5, you can certainly still take a look at how the character was early on, some changes that took place. This is how the ending means to that overall significance to the work as a whole. And again, that kind of helps when it comes to overall body paragraph setup and structure. You got your introduction. I could go body number 1. And keep in mind, these structures that we're putting up on the board, they're meant to be hopefully helpful, give you ideas. If you decide to deviate from them, that's perfectly fine. It's like the outline I gave you for the synthesis. It's a way to get started, training wheels, but you have your own idea that you want to go with. That's perfectly fine so long as you meet the necessary requirements. So body paragraph number 1, I'm taking a look at a character. I'm going to look at what stage of the character. Early, beginning stages. So kind of like the initial portrayal of the character. Body paragraph number 2. Now I can look at what has happened to that character. Some kind of change. And if a character has changed, what kind of character would he or she be throughout the course of a book? Not static, dynamic. Yeah, so there is change taking place. Static, they remain the same throughout. And so then in body paragraph number 3, now yes, this is where I will be taking a look more so at the ending, but what ends up really being the significance of the change. So I would agree that you probably will be getting more examples, more quotations, and things like that from the latter half of the book. Certainly here you're going to have some significance latter half. The change, depending when that change occurs within the character, could be in the second half of the book. So you might have 3 early on, 6 later. I'm okay with that. You still have a development of an argument. You're still representing the whole entire book. That's perfectly fine. And please don't take the total number of pages, divide by 9, and go, okay, I need a quote from every 27 pages or something like that. Now you're getting way too formulaic. But first half, second half, certainly this one, emphasis going to be on the ending. Again, that third body paragraph, that significance point is really going to be driven home. Conclusion, works cited page, double spaced, Times New Roman. I think it's that chair. Whoever sits there always does something silly. First period, Joey forgot his works cited page on his last journal, so we drove that home. You're doing Times New Roman formatting. The other periods are okay. It must be a morning thing. Any questions for number 5? All right. Last one. choose from a novel. Choose a character. Same thing as we had for number 4 with the alienation. Pick one character. Does not necessarily have to be the protagonist. Certainly going to be someone though who is pretty critical to the development of the book, whose mind is pulled in conflicting directions by 2 compelling desires, ambitions, obligations, or influences. Then, in a well-organized essay, identify each of the 2 conflicting forces and explain how this conflict with one character illuminates the meaning of the work as a whole. So, choose a character. How is the mind getting pulled in 2 different directions? What is the significance of that conflict taking place? So, you're doing Great Gatsby. You can certainly take a look at Gatsby. Do I go after Daisy? Do I just enjoy being a rich guy? You could argue that for Great Gatsby, you want to take a look at Daisy. Should I go with Gatsby? Do I go with Tom? 1984, you got Winston, party, no party. Frederick Henry, Catherine or war effort, things like that. Certainly Huck and Jim, both in Huck Finn, have conflicting desires so far as to what society's expectations are of them as opposed to what they want to do. I don't know if anyone in here is reading The Awakening. We won't even talk about it. Edna's got some conflicts as well that she has to deal with. So any of the books that you're taking a look at, Jungle, Yorgos, has to decide whether he's going to be with family or maybe go on his own, and some other political things that could be taking place. The nice thing about number 6, and again, I don't make this to sound like it's the easy prompt, the prompt itself pretty much tells you from a structural standpoint what to do. What's your first task after your introduction? Identify conflict number 1. Sounds like a body paragraph. Body paragraph number 2, figure out conflict number 2. And then that third body paragraph, how does this conflict within that character illuminate the meaning of the work as a whole, or basically what is that overall significance? So for number 6, I think it's pretty straightforward with it. You'd have conflict 1, and again, this is body paragraphs. Body paragraph number 2, conflict 2, and then last one, overall significance. The prompts are not weighted. It's not that if you take prompt number 5, I give you benefit of the doubt and you get a higher score. It's not that if you take prompt number 3 or number 6, you can only max out at a 7. You can certainly score well on any of them. I don't care which one you do. Pick the one that's going to work best for you. I'm hoping if you're done with your book or you're close to being done with your book, one of those probably should be starting to kind of move up to the top of your list, as I think that would be the best one for you. Make sure you have the 3 body paragraphs, make sure you have the necessary evidence. Really make sure that you're trying to support your evidence throughout the course of the book. If I put on your independent reading journal or I put in the Grapes of Wrath, your scope, your range of evidence, you might want to broaden. Be making sure that you're pulling things from all throughout the course of the book. And when possible, and depending on what you're doing, it might vary, when possible, I always suggest going in chronological order because it allows them, for the context of that book, the plot line to really kind of come through. The main concern early in the year that was happening with Grapes of Wrath essays when it came to your evidence, a lot of times we have a comment, make sure you establish the context of the event. What's happening? Who are the characters? What are the events taking place? That's been better with the independent reading journal. Just make sure you continue to develop that. This will be a longer essay than an independent reading journal response. There's not a minimum to it, but I would think the more successful essays are probably going to be in that 1,100 to 1,300 word count. Just to kind of give you an idea, because you're adding an extra body paragraph to what you're reading to the journals. You're adding more evidence within those examples. That introduction, that conclusion is certainly going to be more developed than if you were doing probably 500, 550 words. So there's not a minimum. It's not going to be that you have to have this number. But if you type the essay and you find yourself sitting at 950, there's probably a good chance you need to explain more context. You need to make the argument a little bit clearer. Go into detail about the significance. So just be aware of those things. Prompt number 7, which is not on page 24, but it's on page 25. It's a DRQ, and it's about which is better, stuffing in the bird or outside the bird. Outside the bird is the correct answer. So,
No.
that one's not an option.
Inside.
Inside is like smushy.
There's something wrong with the way you're looking.
Maybe you should just eat some
Don't stuff the bird if you fry it. That's also that's a no. Yes.
fried lobster.
Everybody has so many.
Yeah.
This is the first year in a long time I'm gonna deep fry a bird. I'm a little.
I'm sad.
Well, three. Because I think it was Mr. Thomas you mentioned the eater was still bird. That's bad. It's frozen. Or it's thawed out long enough you drop it in.